Hello, students who are waiting for our webinar. Would you do me a favor and in the comments, just let us know that you can hear us and that we sound clear. And once we see that comment, we'll be able to get started in just a moment. I love that some of you are already asking, but the link to get credit for attending the webinar will appear after the webinar is over. So you do have to watch the whole thing. What? Somebody asked.
No, your voice.
Oh, I'm doing a funny voice.
Ready?
I thought we were doing a sound check, but Austin's not yet.
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Hello, students and other interested parties. We're here to talk about the spherical Earth and the very real moon landing. I just want to start it off that way. The real name of the presentation is Investigating Flat Theories About the Earth and Moon. And as you know, our webinars are all about conspiracy theories this semester. So we're going to talk about some really exciting, really weird conspiracy theories today.
All right, so today our presenter is Professor Allegra Davis Hanna.
Hey, you got my name right.
She's an instructor of English and the Department Chair for Humanities and English. English and Humanities?
English and Humanities.
English and Humanities.
Put the important things first.
And my name is Misty Wilson-Mertens. I am the Department Chair for Social Sciences, and I'm an Assistant Professor of History. So today, I want to ask Professor Hanna all about the flat Earth and how we know it's flat.
I think you're joking.
I am joking.
But, you know, I can never tell because some people really do think that the Earth is a flat disc.
Can you give me an example of somebody who believes this?
I sure can. So before anyone gets a little bonkers in the comments, I do want to let you know that the person you're looking at, or will be looking at in just a second, is my neighbor. And this is his home. And he has painted this on the outside of his home. He also has a great deal of decorative yard art. And he's got it painted all over both of his cars. And he parks his cars in downtown high traffic areas. I live in Denton, in downtown high traffic areas to make sure everyone sees his interesting take on the shape of the Earth.
And this is a legitimately held belief that he holds.
It is 100% legitimate to him. And he has been the subject of a number of documentaries. Some of them student films, but one of them a real big documentary that's on the documentary film circuit right now. So these are real people who really believe these conspiracy theories. And we're going to talk today all about where their information or misinformation comes from and how they ended up believing these things, how conspiracy theories feed into each other and proliferate,
how we can protect ourselves from falling victim to this.
Protect ourselves, but also the dangers of falling into this. So it's not just funny that a person believes the Earth is flat, but it can sometimes be dangerous to believe, and spread this kind of misinformation. As always, if you have questions, you're welcome to put them there in the comments. I see a lot of you chatting already, and we'll try to field those questions. Misty is here. Professor Wilson-Mertens, I'm sorry.
Misty's fine.
Is here fielding those questions. So this is his truck.
And Dr. Leah Tarwater is in our comment section too, so she's helping us as well.
Absolutely. So let's start with what the flat Earth conspiracy theory is.
So, Allegra, what is it?
Missy was supposed to ask me. So the basics of their theory are that the Earth is a flat disk.
So literally flat. Like, you mean that it is like a pancake?
Yes.
Okay.
And that it looks exactly like it does here on the screen, so that the North Pole is in the middle.
Okay.
That the countries are sort of around it.
Continents?
Yes, continents. Sorry, land masses are all around it. And then the edge is an ice wall. And they're not, so what we think of as Antarctica is actually all around us.
Okay, so this diagram has white on it. That's not empty space. That's ice.
That's ice.
Okay.
And they're not sure how far or vast that ice wall is. But the known world to us is this disk surrounded by ice, which is what we think of as Antarctica. And again, we don't know how far that ice goes. They believe that gravity is a lie and that Earth is actually moving upward.
Upward, like on an elevator?
Yes.
Okay.
That NASA, the National, what does this stand for? Aeronautics Space Administration. Someone's going to Google that and tell me if I'm wrong. That NASA is engaged in a generations-long cover-up. That the Earth is being pushed upward by dark energy, and that underneath the Earth is, their answer, rocks.
Benjamin in the comments wants to know, what about other planets? Do they think that they're also flat?
As far as I can tell, yes, they think all planets are round but Earth, or that our complete understanding of the solar system is false.
Okay.
It's a great question. I'll be honest. I had to dig very far into the depths of these conspiracy theory websites and watch a number of their videos to get this information for us. So I pulled this information out of the dark recesses of the internet, but I didn't click on all of their links, so I don't know the depth of their theory. Yes.
So why do people believe this?
So it sounds bizarre, but people have a persistent belief that anecdotal or experiential evidence is superior. So anecdotal means it's an anecdote, like it's a story, it's something you heard or I heard or my mom heard or I heard in the grocery store. Anecdotal evidence or experiential evidence, meaning things I personally have seen or experienced. People believe that those types of evidence are superior to scientific or empirical evidence, which means things that are tested using the scientific method and proven using the scientific method, making it empirical evidence, things that are tested and provable and verified.
So since I myself have not gone into a rocket and gone into space and seen that the Earth is round, therefore I have no evidence that the Earth is round.
Exactly. And because when I look at the horizon, it seems flat, that must be it.
Okay.
And this persistent belief that what I experience is superior in nature to scientific evidence perpetuates pretty much all of the conspiracy theories that we are ever going to talk about.
And is that because they don't believe experts?
It is because they don't understand it, and that it is comforting to create a worldview that you understand. I see a flat horizon just like in this picture, so I think the Earth is flat. A complex theory of the round Earth is challenging for me to understand scientifically, so I reject that notion. A lot of people also just have animosity or loss of trust towards science or scientific experts, so they're naturally skeptical of scientists. Some people have a general distrust of the government, and that's going to come up when we talk about how the flat Earth conspiracy theory is related to the moon landing conspiracy theory. Some people just have a misunderstanding of basic scientific facts. Some people think that they should be able to see the curvature of the Earth, which of course you can't see with your own eye.
Well, not from the vantage point of being on the ground.
Or even from the vantage point from being on a very tall building.
Right.
Or even from the vantage point of looking out across the ocean. You can't see the curvature of the earth. People think that you should be able to. And then really the reason that it's popular is because there is a preponderance of so-called support and evidence. And if you remember, my neighbor's truck said that if you Google these specific search terms, or if you watch these specific videos on YouTube, then you will come up with a preponderance of support. And there are hundreds of videos on YouTube about the flat earth.
But in this day and age, where we have more technology and more information available to us than any previous generations, you're telling me people seriously still believe this?
Yes. Even people who understand that global warming is real and that humans are the cause of global warming, they still don't necessarily understand the shape of the earth. Even if people, which I mean, generationally, millennials are less or tend to be less religious than people older than them, right? Which means they should, in theory, have a closer relationship with science and scientific information. Some people still believe the earth is flat. Even people who understand evolution and the history of life on the planet, sometimes those people still think the earth is flat.
It just seems hard to believe.
Yeah.
That, again, given the amount of information we have, some people would seriously and not in a joking manner believe this.
So I will tell you this. Some people, especially famous people, when they say they believe the earth is flat, they are joking or it's a hoax. They're trying to get attention. But lots of people genuinely believe it. And I will tell you that my neighbor, his name is Eric, he's a real human and he really does believe it. And I'm telling you this because he's very public about it. Obviously, he painted it on his home. And he's a real human. I've met him. So I can tell you that there are real humans behind this.
He's not a caricature to you because
right.
you have met him.
Exactly. A researcher at the University of Chicago said many people are willing to believe many ideas that are directly in contradiction to a dominant cultural narrative, which means that they believe things that are the opposite of what most people think. And he thinks that conspiratorial beliefs stem from a human tendency to perceive unseen forces at work. And this is known as magical thinking. And before any of us make fun of flat earth conspiracy theorists or people who believe any of these myths or conspiracy theories, I want to tell you that all of us at some point in time engage in magical thinking.
So we've talked about how this can exist, but can you give me examples of magical thinking? Because I think many of us would say, no, I don't do that.
So a lot of people would say, no, I don't believe in magical thinking, but you do. If you think that you have mojo, if you think that people have cooties, if you think that certain things are lucky or unlucky. So this is like,
my team is doing really well in the World Series. I'm going to stop washing my socks.
Right. Or they do much better when I don't watch live, or these are my lucky socks, or this is my lucky tie. If you believe in karma, and I'm not talking about if you have the religious belief of karma, but if you just believe in like what people offhand say, it's karma, that's magical thinking. Superstitions. Right. So there's a picture here of not stepping on a crack because you don't want to break your mother's back. Right. Black cats walking under ladders, breaking mirrors, opening umbrellas inside your house. All those things are superstitions. And all of these are examples of magical thinking. Now, I have not going to take a poll and ask whether the people watching, whether anybody else engages in any of this kind of magical thinking. But you can see from the list here that it's extremely common.
Right.
So a belief in a conspiracy theory is a broad kind of out of control extension of this. And it's not just my kooky neighbor, right? Sometimes it's celebrities.
Yeah. And so this is, I think, interesting because we do have more information available to us really than any point in history. But that also means we have kind of a lot of junk information available to us.
Yeah.
And also that sometimes we let celebrities influence our beliefs.
I like how the word celebrity is in quotation marks, because You don't know who either of these people are.
I don't.
But exactly. Anybody can make a YouTube video. Anybody can tweet something out and it can get thousands of retweets, hundreds of retweets. It can get screenshotted and put all over the place. Anybody can make a blog. Anybody can make a podcast. So yes, we have access to more information than anybody else in history, but we also have information, or we also have access to more misinformation than anybody else in history.
So
absolutely.
It's kind of on you to go verify this stuff.
It is absolutely on you to verify. And although I don't think we need to spend very much time on this, I do feel that in order to cover my bases, we do need to make sure that you all understand it is scientifically verified that the Earth is round. There are photos from space. Scientific experiments can verify it and replicate those experiments to verify it. Also, you can just use geometry to figure out that the Earth is round. We have observation from people who have been to space. And of course, tides and tidal patterns suggest that the Earth is round. I just want to make sure you all know that there is video from space of a rotating spherical Earth. And in order to be flat, something would have had to flatten it, which there is no evidence of. And you can see the shape of the Earth when you look at the moon. So in case you ever doubt this.
Well, explain that to me. What do you mean by that?
So we have, not necessarily eclipses, but, half moon, new moon, partial moon, quarter moon.
The phases of the moon.
That's what it's called. The phases of the moon, right? The phases of the moon, that's the Earth leaving a shadow on the moon. It's leaving a round shadow on the moon, as you can see in this diagram right here, okay? This is round shadows in the moon. If the Earth were flat, it would leave a flat shadow on the moon. And so you can verify if you look at the moon that the Earth is round. That is the Earth's shadow that you are seeing.
Okay, so
hopefully everybody understands that.
People that are invested in flat Earth theory.
Yeah.
Do they believe that this is a nefarious conspiracy
Some
theory?
of them do, yes.
Is there a group or entity behind it, for lack of a better term?
So for the most part, conspiracy theory blames NASA, various governments. I mean, all governments that have space programs would have to be behind this, including Russia, China.
They would have to be in conjunction with each other.
Yeah, in part of this conspiracy. And some people think it has to do with the Freemasons. I didn't go down that rabbit hole. I try to avoid Freemason rabbit holes as often as possible.
It's a good policy.
So more interestingly, and this is what I've always wondered, and this is what I've always wondered about my neighbor, is what do you think is motivating people to lie to us about the shape of the Earth?
Right.
If you think,
why do that?
Yeah. If you think the Earth is flat, then you think people are lying about the Earth being spherical. What reason would anyone have to lie? So some people think that it is a way to get money. So you're pretending to have a space program and then you're using the money for something else.
So this is a vast government conspiracy.
Multi-government conspiracy.
To spend money.
Yes.
Instead of going to a space program to fund whatever Black Ops deal we have going on.
That is one explanation. Another is that we thought the Earth was round and now nobody wants to admit they were wrong.
Okay.
Another is that there are lots of resources in Antarctica that the governments are trying to conceal from us.
Austin Online says maybe it's because globes cost more to make than flat maps. So it's a vast global conspiracy by the globalists.
Globes are expensive. And so, I mean, that was the joke I always made. Like, do you think it's globe manufacturers propagating this lie? But this is what they think.
Okay, so how can we be sure of what you're telling us?
Well, other than the fact that every scientist agrees.
Not good enough.
That's what you have to do. And even if we're not talking about the flat Earth, even if we're talking about something else, even if we're talking about climate change or anything, right? What you have to look for is scientific consensus. Scientists believe things are true when they can prove it or verify it in an experiment, and when they can duplicate those results in other circumstances. So if most, the majority, or all scientists agree on something, then you can be pretty sure that it's the truth. And a lot of times people say, well, scientists told you eggs were bad, and now scientists told you eggs were good. That's not really true either. Scientists said, we have a study showing that eggs might be better for our health than we thought. If a scientist says it with certainty, then they are certain.
Well, and if a scientist was able to prove that the Earth was flat, wouldn't that person become instantly famous and well known?
You would think, but they're probably part of the conspiracy to take all of the resources from Antarctica.
Okay.
I want you to remember that what we can see personally is not the same as what science can observe and prove. And so while it is true that we personally, standing outside our or looking outside our windows, cannot see the shape and curvature of the Earth, we can be sure that it is round. It's important to remember that you don't know more than experts in their field, and that the amount of information does not have anything to do with how valid it is. So even though there are hundreds of YouTube videos, that doesn't mean any of them are accurate.
Okay, but go with me down this rabbit hole for a minute.
Okay.
So let's say that one of the big pieces of evidence that we have that the Earth is round is that people from space have seen the Earth and it's round.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what if that was faked? What if the moon landing didn't exist and all of those pictures are faked?
You know, some people think it. Some people believe that the moon landings, because remember, there have been more than one, that the moon landings were fake, that the pictures we have from science or from space are fake, that astronauts are all lying, and that none of this can be trusted. And that's why the flat Earth conspiracy theory is so closely related to the moon landing conspiracy theory. And in fact, it's why you can't really talk about one without the other.
So these are not two completely wholly separate theories. These are interrelated.
I suppose they are. I mean, I do know of a person. I'm not going to tell you their name because they're probably going to listen to this. I do know of a person who thinks that the moon landing was faked, but who acknowledges that the Earth is spherical.
Okay, so you can be in the two separate camps.
That's correct.
But there is a lot of overlap.
There is. I mean, in order to think the Earth is flat, you have to think the moon landing was faked, because there are pictures from it of Earth.
Okay. So tell me how we know that that actually happened.
So the moon landing conspiracy theory is that the Apollo program is fake, that none of the landings are real, that no one has ever walked on the moon, that NASA is covering up a history of lies about space travel, and that NASA manufactures, destroys, and tampers with evidence, including photos, recordings of sound and video, transmissions, and rocks.
Does everyone agree that the moon is real?
As far as I can tell.
So it's not a hologram
because
that NASA
again,
is projecting.
We can personally see it.
Okay.
And that's why we can agree it's round, because we can personally see it. And if we could send all the flat earthers to space, hopefully we would be able to change their mind. This picture is one of the examples that they use. They say that this is a sneaker print that doesn't match any of the moon boots, but to me it just looks like somebody moved a boot quickly. But this is one of the biggest pieces of evidence of moon landing conspiracy theorists here.
Give me other reasons people might believe in this conspiracy theory.
Well, people have a tendency to mistrust the government, and a little skepticism about the government is okay, but people have a tendency to overly mistrust the government. Again, not being able to understand the science of space travel causes a lot of people discomfort. And so it's easier. I've seen movies and I know how movies are made. So it's more comforting to say it's a movie, it's fake, than it is to say there are all of these things happening that I couldn't possibly ever understand. The other thing we have to remember is, and I think somebody just said this in the comments, sometimes if you believe the minority opinion, it makes you feel like you're smarter to everyone else. Like, I know it was fake, even though all of you sheeple think that it's real. And so that gives people like a false sense of intellectual superiority when they're in the minority and they think they've figured out something that other people haven't figured out. Also, sometimes they have to believe the moon landing is fake to support other conspiracies theories they believe in. And sometimes this is an excuse that people use to take money away from NASA and use it for other governmental purposes.
All right, so you have convinced me that this conspiracy theory exists. Now convince me that we actually landed on the moon.
Okay. There's photographic evidence. But I suppose if you thought it was faked, then your photographs would not sway you.
Right, because those could be made in a studio or something.
Right. There's data recordings. There's transmissions, right, of people being in space. But I suppose people can think that you'd have to believe that every single astronaut who's been to space is lying.
And cosmonauts and...
Right. Exactly. All astronauts from our country and all astronauts from every other country, they're all lying.
Together.
Right. That the photos we have of 2012, they're satellite photos of the moon, and they show the tracks that they made during the moon landing, because of course nothing would be disturbing the dirt. So
right, because there's
the shoe print, the shoe prints are still there. You'd have to think those photos are faked. You'd have to, I mean, the other thing is, it's actually, given the technology at the time, would have been harder to fake than to do. And
explain that idea.
Well, the technology you'd need to fake the moon landing in terms of video and audio recordings, in terms of staging a launch and staging a landing, both of these things were viewed by people en masse. In order to fake all of those things, that would be harder than just putting someone on the moon.
Okay.
And of course, there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever that it was faked. None. None at all. Just none. But if you really want to be sure, if you really don't believe me, here's what I'm going to tell you as a professor, as a scholar, as a person, as a responsible citizen. We cannot responsibly say things like scientific agencies, multiple governments, hundreds of humans, a dozen astronauts, photographic evidence, videos from space, and data reports are all fake, but that videos we found on YouTube are real because they have some graphics and some diagrams. You have to look at the total sum of all the information you have, and you have to say what here makes the most sense.
We have somebody in the comments who said that many YouTubers are putting out controversial videos of things they know maybe are not real in order to get clicks to get money.
That is absolutely true. And I mean, that's true for people who spread fake news. That's true for people who make YouTube videos. They say they make videos about things they know aren't true to get a bunch of clicks. The problem is they are spreading misinformation, and people who watch those videos then think those things are real or true. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
And so then another student said, so everyone in the government would have to be in on this.
Yes, everyone in the government, every person in the space agency, and all of those people who stood outside watching the rockets launch and watching things land, all of those people would have to be in on it. And I don't know if you've ever tried to keep a secret, but I don't know that we could keep a secret that hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people were in on. I just don't think that we could do that.
Is there a overarching theme in our society that might help explain this?
Yes. There's a lot of crazy things happening in the comments. But what's happening, what both of these are examples of, is anti-intellectualism.
Explain that to me.
It's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It is a resistance of intellectuals and intellectualism. It is a hostility and mistrust of intellect, intellectuals, experts, researchers, scientists, and professors. Why are you making that face?
I'm just reading the comments.
Is there something happening?
There's a lot happening.
Okay. That's fun. That's great. Fun times. Okay. So, anti-intellectuals are describe themselves as champions of the common people, and they create a false divide between common people and intellectuals. And according to anti-intellectuals, you and I, as college professors, we would be the intellectuals. We would not be associated with common people.
So there's a divide.
They've created a false divide.
Okay.
A real divide doesn't exist, of course, because I shop at Kroger the same as everybody else. Anti-intellectualism is an attempt to undermine the credibility of your political opponent. And this is not specific to any political party at all. It is something that people use to discredit all intellectuals, and can be used by a person on any part of the political spectrum. It's typically associated with class issues. It's related to like working class angst against those of perceived higher status. So really it's those uptight scientists and professors don't know what it's like to be a normal human being, and we can't trust them. Creating a divide between intellectuals and common people is an old tactic. It's a tactic that's been used by fascist governments. It's a tactic that's been used by all types of politicians. And it's a way to get people to believe lies, to forget things that are true, and to be afraid. And of course, if people are afraid, you can get them to do, believe, or buy just about anything.
So if this becomes widespread, what happens to our culture?
We have a culture of ignorance. The best example I can give you is if somebody holds up a snowball and says that it's proof that climate change isn't real. You're allowed to believe anything you want. There's a scientific consensus about climate change, and the fact that one time it snowed somewhere doesn't prove or disprove that climate change isn't or is happening. It's just not a good faith argument, okay? And it leads people to believe things that are not true. If we motivate people from fear and we start creating a system of us versus them, where we rely on the simplest explanations and we're concerned with what we think and not what can be proven, that's where prejudice and social divide and social unrest comes from. I know it doesn't seem like these things are related to believing in the flat earth, but they are. Because this is when you take away critical thinking. This is when you take away your willingness to admit that other people might know more than you about a specific topic. And this is where you start saying, what I know, what I see, what I believe, that's what matters.
And so why would those in power want us to engage in this culture of ignorance?
Because anybody who wants to control you, and that could include a corporation, a politician, a political party, any kind of big system. Anybody who wants to control us, to get us to buy things, to get us to vote certain ways, it's in their best interest to get us to mistrust intellectuals, because intellectuals aren't driven by anything but information. So if we can get you to mistrust the intellectuals, then we can get you to believe or disbelieve anything we want.
So how do we arm ourselves against this? How do we protect ourselves? How do we make sure that we are good stewards of information?
So if you want to be a responsible, critically thinking, informed human person, which most of us want to be, and that's probably why you're on this webinar, you're probably not here for fun, even though I am. Trust experts. When there's a preponderance of evidence, trust the experts. Do your own research and look for a variety of sources.
So don't only look for sources that back your preconceived biases.
Exactly. Look for sources and information that come from a lot of places. And remember, scientific peer review means that we can replicate evidence and come up with the same or similar results. So if something is true, then multiple scientists should be able to verify it. We're gonna review the CRAP method, but it's something we've talked about in previous webinars, and it's a way to evaluate information that you get. Of course, ask a professor, a teacher, or a librarian, and even if it's not something that I'm an expert in, we are all experts. Professors, teachers, and librarians are all experts in information literacy, which means they know how to find and evaluate sources of information that are reputable. So even if you ask me something that's outside of my knowledge base, even if it's something I'm not an expert in, I can help you find information that would accurately explain a complex concept. I'm not a science expert, but I can help you find the information that you might be looking for. The other thing you can do is take classes in those subjects, right? If you're interested in the shape of the Earth and the moon landings, then take classes in physics and astronomy. You can get more information that way. And what you have to do is realize that you may not fully understand complex scientific concepts and that you have to be open to new explanations. You have to rely on real evidence.
May be some discomfort while you're learning.
Absolutely. I don't like admitting that I don't know something.
So that cognitive dissonance isn't something you should be fearful of or run from.
Yeah. So what I want you to do, and here's why it's dangerous to believe wrong information. You have to save your skepticism for the people who are actually working against you. NASA is not working against you. Lobbyists, corporations, financial systems, oppressive people, hate groups, fake news, all of those people are working actively against you. And so that's who you should save your skepticism for.
Aaron Smith says, well, isn't saying that those people are working against us a conspiracy theory?
No. Sort of. No. Misty's laughing at me.
I am, because he's doing exactly what you told him to do, to question your authority and to look this up.
That's a very complex question.
Those are things that could work against you.
Yes.
If you're knowledgeable in those fields, you will be less likely to be taken advantage of by those things.
That's correct. They're not all out to get you all the time. But
that would be a conspiracy theory.
But there are often times that certain groups of people or certain organizations are working against your best interests, but they're not necessarily out to get you. Does that make more sense? Does that sound more sane?
It's less conspiracy theory.
Thank you, Aaron. So this is the CRAP method, which we've talked about before, and these are the questions that you ask yourself when you get new information. How current is the information? How relevant is it to what I'm talking about? What is the source of the information? So the authority, and this is the part where people get a little trapped sometimes. But I promise you that physicists who are at the top of their field and doing research and teaching this in major universities have more authority on the subject than that guy with a YouTube video. How accurate is it? And you can test accurate by seeing if the same or similar information is in other sources. Does it seem unbiased and free from emotion? And you have to evaluate, just like you guys are very good at this one, evaluating the purpose. So are they trying to sell me something? Are they trying to get clicks? Are they trying to sell ads? Or are they trying to educate and illustrate information? And while Misty talks,
Well, so these are actually questions I have for you,
okay.
Allegra.
Okay.
Since you're our expert today.
Okay.
Should you try to convince people of a legitimately held scientific viewpoint? So in this case, someone you know, let's say your friend, believes that the Earth is flat. Should you try to convince that person that they are wrong and that the Earth is round?
That's a hard question. So I don't want you to spend a lot of time arguing with people on the internet.
Oh, that was my next question for you, actually.
But I do think that if you know someone who believes something contrary to a legitimately held scientific viewpoint, then you should try to have a conversation with them. I don't know that you should say, I'm going to go in there and convince her she's wrong. But I do think you should say, I have a responsibility to share accurate information.
So this is a slightly related question. Let's say it's not your friend, but it's just somebody on Twitter. Should you engage with that person? Should you try to convince them in an online setting?
So, no.
Why not?
For your own benefit.
Explain what you mean by that.
I mean, you'll drive yourself crazy if you spend your time trying to make sure no one on the internet is wrong.
Okay, that's a good point.
I mean, you just will. And we've all gotten caught up doing it, but it never, in my experience, goes anywhere. Sometimes the best we can hope for is two people saying, okay, agree to disagree. I respect your opinion. But
and do you think
this is not
like not a real person to me? It's
well,
like
yeah,
a robot.
There's trolls, which are people who are just saying things to goad you, and there are bots who are people who are not real humans, or people who are just copying and pasting responses to stir up controversy. But even if it's a real person, that's not the forum for a level-headed intellectual debate.
This one's more challenging.
Okay.
So how do you handle a situation in which an authority figure has an illegitimate and easily verifiable false belief? So let's say I'm in your English class,
okay,
and you tell me the earth is flat.
Okay.
How do I handle that? I'm using you as the example, so I won't hurt anybody else's feelings.
Well, so here's the thing. If you have an instructor or a boss or an administrator someone who's an authority figure who has a verifiably false belief, it depends on what kind of belief it is. If, again, it's related to a spiritual or religious belief, or if it's something that is a matter of opinion, then no, you don't bring it up. But I think the worst lie that we tell ourselves is that there's two sides to everything, because there aren't. There's not two sides to what shape is the earth. The earth is a sphere. There aren't opinions about it. There's correct and incorrect. You're correct, the earth is a sphere. You're incorrect, the earth is flat. There are not two sides to everything. But there are two sides to lots of things. So if it's something that is a moral value or a personal opinion, or something to do with the legal system or politics, then no, you shouldn't try to engage in an argument about that. But if this is verifiably false and they believe it and they are spreading information that is not true, then I would say yes, push back on it. I would say yes, say, I don't know that that's verifiably true, and I don't know that it's responsible to spread that misinformation.
So, given that all this misinformation exists and proliferates on the internet, are we all doomed?
Probably.
Are we going to end up in the movie Idiocracy?
We are so...
Which I've seen a couple of students put in the comments.
I hope the microphone picked up my dramatic sigh. We're not all doomed, okay? We might seem like we are living in the movie Idiocracy, or we might seem like we are very close to living in the movie Idiocracy, but I can assure you we are not doomed. There are hundreds and thousands and millions of people who are engaged in academic, responsible, and or ethical exchanges of information. The problem we have right now is that the loudest voices tend to be the ones that get the most clicks. So we put crazy people in the forefront.
And there's money to that.
Not crazy, but we put outlandish people in the forefront because they're going to get us clicks, they're going to get us views, they're going to sell us ads, they're going to get us attention, or they're entertaining and they're funny to listen to. But I don't think that we have a huge ignorance problem. I think we have a huge anti-intellectual, not a huge, but we do have a somewhat of an anti-intellectual problem. And I want to make sure that we steer toward intellectualism. And everybody can become an expert on something, whether you're a professor or not. You can be an intellectual. It's not only open to those of us who teach college, you know.
Any other concluding thoughts?
I just want to see if there are any questions I've missed that are legitimate questions in the comments. Thank you, Stephanie, for telling me that you could see my facial expression when I sighed. Yeah, Leah brings up a great point that not everybody wants to hear your opinion. So if I've missed a question, I apologize. Just retype it there in the comments while Missy tells us about the upcoming webinars. So again, if you have a question, just feel free to ask it again.
We have 4 more webinars in the Learn to Discern series. Next up is going to be myself and Dr. Tarwater telling you all about Tecumseh's curse and a possible curse on the U.S. presidency. Then we're going to talk about vaccinations, scientific literacy and democracy, and confronting denial. And that last one's going to be about Holocaust denial primarily, but about the idea that we deny historical facts throughout time.
So you see the times and the dates and the times here. And of course, those are, if your professors led you here, then that information your professors have.
A good idea is also, if you want to make sure you don't miss any of them, just go ahead and click subscribe.
Yeah, subscribe to we're not like being YouTube weirdos, like click subscribe. But yeah, if you do click subscribe,
you'll get an alert when we
and that way you won't miss any. So to get credit for today's webinar, I just put this funny picture in here.
Yes, all of these are online.
Yes. And they say archived. So you can even watch the ones from last semester if you'd like. So to get credit for today's webinar, in about 2 minutes, underneath this video, in the video description, you will see a link to a Google form. That link will be available for 48 hours. So until about this time on Friday, you can access that link, fill out the survey.
Please fill out all of the different boxes.
Please
don't skip any.
Every box on the survey. And Professor Wilson Mertens sends the survey to every instructor who's listed. So you do not need to tell your instructor that you are here. You just need to fill out the survey and we take care of the rest for you. If it is after 48 hours and your instructor is still letting you do something for credit, you'll need to talk to them about what you have to write or do to verify your attendance. But within the 48-hour period, you click the Google link. We've got it ready. As soon as the video goes up, the link will be there in just a moment, and you click that link and you'll get the extra credit. Most of you have had no issue with this whatsoever. I appreciate all of the questions and all of the enthusiasm in the comments. The comments will stay with the video as well if you want to reflect back on those. Anyway, we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar on the 6th at 2 p.m. And that's about presidential assassination and assassination attempts. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.